Today on Queued Up, we are joined by Amy Joyce, the Executive Director of the Missouri Association of School Personnel Administrators. Amy's dedicated more than 3 decades to the public education, most recently serving as Chief Human Resources Officer in Parkway Schools before stepping into her current statewide role. She's been a MOASPA leader for years, where she continues to champion HR professionals who keep our schools running. We'll talk about what she's seen across Missouri when it comes to recruiting and retaining talent, how the HR role in schools has evolved, and what excites her about the future of the profession. Amy brings both the wisdom of experience and the passion of someone who's still pushing the field forward. I can't wait for you to hear her perspective. This is Queued Up. This is Queued Up, where we amplify the voices of educators with the science, soul, and story shaping education. So your career, though, didn't start just 12 months ago as the executive director. You've been in HR for how long?
Over 20 years.
Okay.
Over 20 years. I started in HR in 2002 in the Francis House School District.
Okay. Is that St. Louis area?
It's in St. Charles.
St. Charles. Okay. One of the things that's unique about HR in school settings is oftentimes you have an education background and then you come over to HR. Can you talk about that a little bit? You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, I will. So my bachelor's was in elementary education. I received my master's in school administration, became a school principal, and had an opportunity to go to central office in the curriculum department. And I loved that work. The school district was challenged with some financial constraints, so they had to cut my position. And the superintendent said, "Hey, do you want to become an HR administrator?" And I said, "Yeah, that sounds fun. You get to hire teachers, right?" And they said, "Yeah, you get to hire teachers." But what they failed to tell me was everything else that you had to do. So my background was elementary education and the principalship and curriculum. And then I just moved over into HR.
And do you find that that's a pretty standard path to HR in education, where they come from the education teaching side and then move over?
It is. Yeah. And I would say 99% of school districts in the state of Missouri, maybe even around the country, go that path.
Okay. Yeah, it's a high percentage.
It really, really is. And I mean, I'm not going to put that number on it because I don't know, but I could tell you there are very, very few chief HR officers that come from the business world that have a degree in human resources.
Okay.
So school administrators go through maybe one personnel course in their master's work or their doctorate work. They don't go through a formalized human resources certification program.
And I am sure there's a lot to learn when you haven't gone through a formal program. So how did you do that?
Well, I called the attorney a lot. I didn't
Making
even
sure
know
everything was legal.
Right. Well, it's your background is special education, correct?
Right.
So there are a lot of acronyms with special education.
I love them.
We love them. We love them in education. Right. Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing in human resources. FMLA, ADA, FLSA. Sometimes you don't even know what it means, what you need to do, where did it come from, does it apply to us, and what is our liability and risk if we don't do it. Those are the things that you need to learn right away when you jump in. I had to learn vocabulary. And by going to conferences, talking to attorneys, reading articles, books, that's how you learn. And it's really learning on the job. And so something comes up, call the attorney, figure it out, talk to somebody that's mentoring you, figure out what you have to do. It's just learning on the job. That's what happened.
And most of the teachers that I know really like formal learning. I mean, they love to learn, but we want you to show us what you're expecting. Yeah. So we'd like a nice little rubric for our jobs, right?
Yeah.
So HR doesn't typically come with that rubric, that scoring guide, helping us know what to do.
Right.
So what are some pitfalls that you've seen in the HR industry, specifically in schools, and what do you do about those pitfalls?
Well, I recognized this a long time ago, and I knew at some point I was going to retire. And I'll tell you a funny story. I was working in the Ferguson-Florissant School District, assistant superintendent of HR. At that point, I had been in the job for 15 years. And the superintendent of Parkway calls me, and he wants me to apply for the opening. And I said, no, I'm really happy here. I love this job. Why would I want to come to Parkway? And he said, well, it's Parkway. Everybody wants to come here.
Right.
And I said, no, I really like things here in my school district. Well, he continued to court me. And so I ended up applying and I ended up going. They made it, attractive enough that I couldn't say no. And so I went. I had to relearn the climate, relearn the culture, relearn the employees. But here's what I told him. I said, Keith, I'm going to give you 4 years. I said, but then I don't want you to be in the same position that you are now, trying to recruit and find somebody. I said, because if you believe that you have great school leaders that can sit in the HR position, then we're going to train and develop them.
Yeah.
And so we identified 4 key leaders that had an interest in HR. He invested money, and we spent 2 years succession planning.
What a smart idea.
And so they met with us every month for 2 years. We took them to state conferences, national conferences, webinars, monthly meetings. We learned everything from workforce planning to negotiations to unions to laws, everything, the vocabulary. Then when I retired, he was able to interview from that team.
Wow.
My director just so happened to retire the same year. So actually 2 out of the 4 sat in the seats and they did an amazing job. And it was during the pandemic because I planned to retire. I didn't plan for a pandemic, but it just
You don't have that kind of power.
So when you say pitfall, that is the pitfall. We don't do a good job of identifying future leaders and doing succession planning for the future of school districts. Not only human resources, but there's curriculum, student services, the superintendency, and it just comes down to time. We are stretched so thin.
For sure.
That's where outside people, retirees or consultants or whomever, need to be tapped into that talent so they can help. And doing it internally is just, they don't have the capacity, right, to do it or the time.
Yeah, there's no time. And that's what I think we struggle with so much in school settings is the time. And you're talking about, as you were walking in as that first year HR person and not having the information, knowing exactly what to do. I had a similar story where we got a new special education director.
Okay.
And she came in and had not been in special education in quite some time. And first thing she asked us is, where's the manual for my role? And all of us were like, there is no manual.
Yeah.
This is,
What do you mean?
and so, yeah, it was good luck. And it was funny, at the time, to think out that there was a manual. But to me, it sounds like what you did with the 4 staff that you guys identified is you figured out and you created an in vivo manual. Like, how do you do this job?
Right.
And how do you do it well? And what great consistency across people. And that helps kids. I mean, it's all about making sure that we've got the right people in the right places that have the good knowledge.
And that's part of the reason why superintendents look internally for HR people. It's usually a high-performing principal that has great school climate because that feeling can then transfer to HR. Well, you can create a great feeling in the HR office, but the work that you do doesn't feel so good sometimes. So that's the harder stuff that they struggle with. How do I negotiate? How do I discipline a teacher or put them on a notice of deficiency? How do we go through a teacher termination hearing? How do I make sure that everyone is being treated fairly so we don't have lawsuits? So it's those kinds of things that I think is the biggest pitfall. And that's why I love this conference and I love this organization because the training and development is what I believe in for the people that are doing the jobs in the school. They need support. They support everyone in their school district. We need to support them.
True.
Yeah.
Well, how important would you say is HR in the whole climate and culture of the entire district, not just in the HR department, but beyond that?
It's key. And I would say that's something else, Tracy, that we try to change is HR is not one silo department that works independently of anybody else. What I say is HR is the thread throughout the school district. It's the heartbeat of the school district. It's like the school library.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to go to the library and gather. That's what HR does. HR brings everybody together because we are the ones that know what you do.
Mm-hmm.
We're there to support you when you're struggling. We're there to develop you if you want to continue on. We're there to help you when you want to retire. So that's where more money and more people need to be invested in human resources departments so you can further support the whole organization.
Yeah. And, I think back to when I was a teacher, and I don't think that I had a clear understanding of what HR was. I was also young, so I didn't have a lot of life experience. But when I would think of HR as a teacher, I would think trouble. They contacted me when when I needed more CEUs or my license to be, and I'm like, oh, I got to do this right. So I didn't think of it differently than that. How do you help teachers? I mean, because to me, if teachers understood your role,
Right.
it would be a little more cohesive.
Well, it's hard to do, but you have to be visible. And it's getting out into the buildings, it's checking in, it's part of being on through the whole onboarding process, not just the orientation, the one-day session where you give us your W-2, W-4, make sure you check off. And it's truly onboarding and making sure that they understand how they can be supported in their new role. Following up with them, phone calls, emails, whatever it is, you have to take the time and invest in those employees because we lose people way too early in their careers. So you do have to be visible. And once you build those connections, then they begin to kind of spread the word. Hey, I had to go talk to Amy about this thing. She's really nice. She's not here. Is it see? Right, because you generally get labeled, and I have probably had a lot of labels in my career, for being the person that brings the empty box and packing somebody up and leaving them, putting them on administrative leave. That is just so small in comparison to the real impact that you can have on an organization. It's building relationships with union leaders, with board members, with your fellow cabinet, principals, teachers, listening, talking, just being out there.
Being relational, not transactional.
Right.
I mean, I say that again. When everything that we do, we have to be relational. That's where we build that sense of community, whether it's community in the schools or community partnering with even other school districts or other HR personnel.
Yeah.
We have to be relational.
Yeah.
So I am sure you've seen some changes over the years, and especially in HR when I know when I applied for my second teaching job for a special education position, I applied and there were 231 applicants for the one job. And now it feels like we have 231 holes for one applicant.
Yeah.
So what are the major things that you've seen shift in HR? Just what are the major things?
Yeah, so back in 2002, we had 450 elementary education applicants for every opening that we had. And anyway, I would just say you're right on point. The decline in interest in education over the years it's just been compounded. And now it's not only the science. It used to be just foreign language was the only, or special education was the only. Now it is pretty much every position.
Everything.
And I am surprised when I see elementary openings in July and August still. So they're like, we just can't find folks.
Yes.
So what is happening is school districts begin to compete with each other
For the same people.
Not only new, but existing. So they're opening up their salary schedules. They're matching salaries. They're giving people, I don't want to say bonus, but they'll give them a stipend if they have a specific certification. So we are internally competing, which
Very true.
which wasn't a problem in the past. So, we smile and, hey, Rockwood, I know you're my biggest competitor.
Yeah.
You just stole my chemistry teacher. So
So that even though it's a strange,
it does.
Yeah.
Before, when I started, when people were leaving your school district, it generally was because of location. Hey, this is closer to my home. I have kids.
Yeah.
It's just going to make life easier. Now it's about other things that they can get offered. So I think that's a big change. The other big change is I'm just thinking about like the office itself. I joked this morning about some offices might have like the NCR paper and how can we, this teacher went from second to third grade. I need to do this long transition of who gets approval. I would say systems and processes through the support of these companies has just streamlined the HR work to make it easier, faster, better, and more accurate, because the accuracy of data in HR is crucial for payroll, for
Absolutely.
payout, for everything. And if you have something wrong, even with like your staffing plans, you're on the hook.
Yeah.
And so I would say that's a huge change. When I walked into a school, well, it was Parkway. And this was just 10 years ago. The superintendent said, you need to figure out how many teachers we have, because finance is telling me one thing and HR tells me something different. And I said, okay, we'll fix, so we worked together as a team to figure out, number one, how many staff we had so we could answer the question, right?
Yeah.
But then two, where were the holes in our system? And we
It
found
didn't
out,
allow you to accurately
right,
measure that.
we found out that finance and HR built their information system in silos with their company.
Okay.
They didn't talk to each other. And so I would say that that is a big change too. Just the connections within the departments, within the districts that recognize and understand that you have to have collaboration across departments to support each other.
And I think technology has helped tremendously with collaboration. It has also allowed us to work more efficiently, which means we end up taking on more responsibilities, which means collaboration can drop again.
Yeah.
So it's like you take one step forward and two steps back as you're building out things.
Right.
What are some of the innovative things that you have seen in your role that districts are doing to make sure, one, that they retain staff, and then two, that they're able to hire new staff?
Tracy, I'll have to be honest with you. I would say that is probably a gap in my understanding right now.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of things have changed over the last 5 years. Yeah. There's a company here that connected with our state to be like the consortium of all of the job openings. And they're like this one-stop shop for job openings across the state of Missouri. I think that's very innovative.
Right.
Like, where do they get that data? Where are they pulling it from? But
We're definitely having to think outside the box.
Yeah. And I would say I don't know all of the cool, unique things. I think some school districts are just in survival right now.
Right.
And
there's nothing cool and unique.
Hey, we've got an applicant. I think the grow your own programs, I don't want to say that is new or innovative. They've been around for years. Our state has offered grants for school districts that have grow your own programs. The state legislature actually enacted a salary compliance requirement last year that's going to change the way school districts pay teachers.
Oh, okay.
So it's going to be accelerated over the next 5 years.
So is that going to, can you explain it a little bit? I'm not familiar with that.
So it was in Senate Bill 727, and they set a state minimum teacher salary. And by a certain time, you need to meet that as a school district. If your funding wasn't going to allow you to do that, then they would have grants available to support you. But, as legislation changes, new people get into office, some things can be backed down. So there were, again, some negotiations and conversations this past legislative session, and I actually wanted to hear, what's going on. But that money piece is now something that the state is saying, hey, we need to pay our teachers differently and better. So no longer can you pay that $25,000 that was the state minimum, accelerated to 30. Now it's around 48. And so, or 45. Don't quote me on that. But state recognized, hey, we need to do something different. So now school districts have to fall in line per law.
Right.
There was a minimum that was very, very low. Now they've set the bar higher.
Okay.
So that's a big change.
So that should help.
That should help.
But again, everybody's pulling from the same group of people, unless you do grow your own or something like that. It's definitely a challenge. And I see with my position, I get to see school districts across the nation. And so I have seen some innovative things, but again, everybody's pulling from the same population. So it just makes it difficult.
Yeah. And it's hard to go to a job fair, especially in the state of Missouri, and say, hey, come work for us. And then at the end of 30 years, you've got this great retirement. In 30 years, you're going to have it all. Kids don't want to hear about that. No, they really don't. And the statistics on Gen Z and how often they change jobs, we know that it's not about money. It is about the climate. They feel valued. And I go back to what Alicia said. If you feel valued, if you feel that you matter, I'm going to stay because I feel like I belong. Because if they don't, they know that they can go to another school district very easily.
And find a place to belong.
Find a place to belong. Yeah.
So if we know that our newer teachers are, willing to hop and go to other districts, do you think we're at a place where we need to start looking at what kind of training can we do at a state level for teachers or for any of our roles that we have within the public education? If people are changing jobs, we don't have consistency. So my brain's just sitting here thinking, are we at that place?
We might be. We might be, Tracy. And I think that there needs to be training with and among administrators and just really teams of schools about the dynamic of the differences that there are within a school in itself. Because we could have 4 generations working. We still have some boomers that are working in schools. So we've got baby boomers, we've got Gen Xers, Zs, millennials, and I'm not sure what the next one is coming up. But they need to learn how to coexist and work with each other. And as we were talking earlier, the new generation has a voice. They want a voice at the table.
Yes.
And so how do I, as an administrator, listen to someone that just came out of school without having a bias? Oh, you're just new. Like, I'm not going to listen to you. No, we need to listen. We need to listen. And it's not just listen. It's listen, process, learn, understand, ask questions, and follow up. And I think one thing in education, we need to be risk takers without there being negative impact on whatever we try to implement.
Yeah.
Because we know that, well, first of all, I think education is cyclical. I mean, we're going back to handwriting.
Yes.
It's important.
We swing one way and then we
We sure do. So it should be okay to fail.
Yeah.
It should be okay to fail.
I'd love to say that us as educators, we inspire our children to take risk and fail, and it's okay. But I feel like as educators, we're also not good at doing that ourselves.
I agree.
We are very hard on ourselves to make sure that it's perfect. We don't want to have to go to HR and say, I need support in this area. I don't know how to do this.
Right.
So how do we open up those conversations to get people more comfortable?
I think that's maybe the $1 million question.
Yeah.
I think test scores are way too much, maybe on a school district's accreditation, how communities perceive their school. Maybe that is part of the conversation. It's the state ratings, it's all of those things. I don't know. I think it's complicated. We can develop children. Well, first of all, parents have so much impact on them. When we get them, we have them in our schools for 6-7 hours a day, and we're just supposed to give them all these academics. Well, we also need to care about the social and emotional side. So what growth are we actually measuring? Is it
So true.
the academic, or is it the social emotional, or is it all of it together? I have a grandson that he is, my grandson's so smart, he's so cute, everything.
Sure, he's handsome and
right, exactly. His dad is very athletic, plays hockey, and so I look at my grandson and he's going to be an engineer.
Yeah.
And so are we going to force him over here to play these sports?
Right.
Because we enjoyed the sports.
Yeah.
Or do we let him be who he authentically is?
Yeah.
And so that's where, when we measure growth in kids and schools, are the kids being authentically who they are, and are they succeeding at that? And so that's where you see all of the STEM schools and, our specialized schools, the specialized too. So generally, public education, they're dabbling in that personalized learning space. But where has personalized assessment been? I don't know.
Right.
Like, we can offer it, but are we still giving them the standardized testing to measure how well a school district is doing? I don't know.
And then it's also, society plays a big part of this. Sure. How much does society dictate, what we're reporting on as well? And I've used this example again and again in trainings when I'm talking to teachers about helping kids that have behavior outbursts and things like that, that social emotional regulation. And I say, I want you to think about being in the grocery store and standing in line with somebody, and that person that you're in line with starts having an emotional breakdown. You can very visibly see that. Might get scared. You might want to back up. You might be a helper and want to move in. Whatever it is, you can see it. But I can stand next to that same person and I can have no clue if they can read or not. And so we put focus, and I think reading is important. So I don't let anybody think I don't think that. Right. But we put such a focus on academics and the way we perform in those. And then that's how we evaluate teachers on. And the reality is that the individuals that won't make it in our society are the ones that don't have that social emotional regulation. Right. But it's kind of a secondary thing. Yeah. What I hear you saying is like that social emotional, it starts with the student, but it doesn't end there. Right. Like you're carrying that on through to the teachers, right, to your HR team, to everybody.
And then you transfer what kids are going through to the adults that are teaching them. Right. And when you asked a question earlier about the biggest changes, and that is another one, just the mental state of our educators and really some of our HR folks too, just how much we are taking in as far as responsibility, information, working with teachers that are just on the brink, and how can we help and support them? People that are going through terrible medical issues, their life is going to end, working with their families, working with retirement, right? Those are the real heavy issues that not everybody knows what HR does.
Yeah.
And those are things that you can't talk about.
Yeah. So what is it that keeps you awake at night?
Well, I do sleep a lot better now that I'm not sitting.
So what did keep you awake then?
It was the employees.
Yeah.
It really was. And I have this employee, and they've been with us for 27 years, and they are so close to retirement, and they're just falling apart, and we need to support them this year because their family's falling apart. What can we do to help them? Because we know that this isn't what they're capable of doing.
You've seen their performance in your class,
Yeah. And so I used to believe that HR was so black and white and policy driven. And that was me over 20 years ago. I always said the Parkway got the best, Amy, because I learned so much along the way.
Yeah.
About the relationships that you have to have with people. And so that's where there is a lot of gray area in how you work with people to make the best decisions with them, and for the organization. Yeah. If you can just have honest conversations about, okay, we know you've been out on, FMLA, you've been out on leave, let's really talk.
Yeah.
And I can remember this one teacher, I just looked at her dead in her eyes because I could tell you when she was going to ask for FMLA every year, because she would count how many days she had worked, and then she would ask. The next year she would show up, she would work those days and ask. And one year she miscounted, and she came into my office, and I looked at her and I said, "Are you happy?" She wasn't.
Yeah.
She didn't know what her next move was. And this was the only move she knew. And so we talked about alternatives and options and things that she could do.
Yeah.
So she could have a next move in her life to be happy.
Wow, that's awesome.
And so, that's just kind of what I learned along the way. So those things kind of kept me up at night. It's just trying to figure out
how can it be a solution.
Yeah.
But it also, even though it may have kept you up, it allowed you to live out your passion in helping people, figuring out problem solving and how can I help this lady reach her goal of being happy.
Right. But also set the expectation that we have students to serve.
Right.
And so they need the very best.
Yeah.
And so it's, it really is a negotiation. You have to massage it, figure it out.
It's a balancing act for sure.
Yeah. And then working with the administrators and the other teachers in the school because they see what's going on and they know and they want to know why. And why can't, this. And so you have to balance all that too.
Yeah. So it's a lot. It's a lot of burden on an HR team.
It is a lot.
And when you're not in HR, I mean, I've never been in HR.
Yeah.
You don't recognize that or realize that that's what's happening behind the scenes.
Right.
So that's interesting. It would be interesting to see if we went and really focused in on making sure educators across the whole district understood HR and HR understood educators, almost like a open forum or something.
Right.
Just to get that understanding, because you've got the burden of every employee that's struggling is that on your plate.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they walk through the door and you can't talk about it. You can only talk about it with them. And you try to figure it out.
A heavy burden.
Yeah, really is.
So flipping it over to the positive side.
Yeah.
I mean, you have lots of positive. Yeah. I mean, you've got, even that story, it started off as a concern, but moved into a problem solving thing, which is always a positive. But what keeps driving you? What's that passion that makes you get up every day and do what you're doing? I know your roles change, but you're still giving back to the community. You're still contributing. So what is that?
I think my drive and passion is because of what I went through as a new HR administrator. And I know that there's a solution.
Yeah.
It sounds silly. It's almost like I have this computer program that will solve your, how to fill your positions faster. I don't know. But there is a problem.
Yeah.
And there's a solution. We need to invest in our future. We need to do succession planning. We need to do proper training.
Right.
Because we need to support the folks that are just coming out of the school building who have great climate and culture, but just need to know HR. They need to talk that language. So that really is why I continue to come back to this organization and want to be a part of it and want to reach out to communities and just we can do better.
Yeah.
We can do better.
There's always hope.
Yes.
Yes. So I'm excited to see where your journey goes. You've been a year into this role.
Yeah.
And I'm sure with as rapidly as things are changing, you're going to have to stay on your toes the whole time in order to stay ahead of the challenges.
Yeah.
What is your biggest challenge you think you're going to have in the upcoming year?
So the board for MOASPA on Tuesday engaged in a strategic planning process with Kelly from ASPA.
Yes.
And so if the board approves a strategic plan, which will probably be later on in November, we'll have 4 main goals, and then we'll have at least 4 or 5 strategic priorities, and then it'll be those action steps. So my biggest challenge will be identifying the action steps that will have the most impact on MOASPA within membership, business member engagement, professional development. So I think for me, it will be identifying the what so we can have an amazing organization that is thriving even more.
For sure.
So for me, it's balancing that time too.
Yeah.
Because
how much time do you dedicate to each one of those
because
things?
this is not a full-time job. It's I think allocated at 5 to 10 hours. I'm laughing.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure, because I cannot imagine how many hours you work.
And then I do have my little grandbabies a couple days a week.
So you have to spend time.
I know, because that's why you retire, right? Yeah, so you can spend time with that.
Yeah. So one of our big focuses on Queued Up is amplifying the voices of educators. As we close up here, what is the best way that you see that we can amplify the voices of educators?
I would say include them at the table whenever there is a conversation, because there's so many ideas that get implemented at cabinet level, at principal meetings, and we don't talk to the folks that are going to implement them.
That are living it out in the classroom. Yeah. So get them to the table.
Get them to the table.
I love that.
Whether it's the union leaders, sometimes people look at the union leaders as their, arch nemesis. You can't bring them in. I had a whole philosophy, which was a change. It was a complete change. You have to bring them in, talk to them. Hey, what do you guys think about this? This is something that's kind of rolling around. This is something we have to do. Can we partner with you on how we do it? We have to.
Yeah.
But, so it's...
Get the buy-in.
Yeah, get the buy-in, get the partnership, get them at the table. Doesn't mean that you have to do everything, but make sure that they have a voice.
Well, and I believe really strongly in the phrase that clear is kind. And bringing educators to the table is clear. And that's kind. And I think that that goes a long way. It's a great when people, yes. And when people can be heard, and even if the answer is still no, but they've been heard and you've had a discussion and you've valued their opinion, that's going to go over a lot better than just a quick snap decision of change. That's what it looks like from the educator side. I mean, I'm sure there's been months planning up a share and getting it ready and things, but that's what it looks like. So I like that advice. Hopefully any of the viewers that are watching would be able to say, okay, the one takeaway is I'm going to get the educators to the table. Yeah, let's hear their voice. So I appreciate you so much spending time with me today.
Thank you, Tracy.
Yeah,
we appreciate you coming to Moaspa. I mean, everybody's so impressed, and I can't wait to see the podcast.
It's going to be great. And I just thank you again for everything that you've done. Your career has been long in the HR side, and that continuation of those services and still giving back to the community by still doing trainings and things like that. I mean, that is impacting students. And that's what we're about, is making sure that the changes we make are worthwhile for kids. So thank you again for joining us.
You're very welcome.
I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too.
Thanks for listening to Queued Up. Follow and subscribe to stay queued up for what's next.